Hi class, this video is a response to some of your posts related to the Richard Beck reading. I just wanted to note most of the posts were excellent. You did a great job looking at contamination logic, applying it to this issue of homelessness and how does the church reach out. I think most Christians and most churches have good hearts, but we are often unaware of all the psychological barriers that hinder us from really loving well, where I'm not just going to come fix you, I'm going to be with you, right? God doesn't fix our problems, God promises to be with us. And so we're called to sit with people in pain, to be not just like, oh, I'll help that group, but like they're going to be part of us. We're going to be a church family. We're going to enfold them into us, and so we become poor and powerless and voiceless with them as we relate together. But that kind of enfolding is very hard to do. I would rather just like write a check and say, oh, go get the homeless some food. That would be great. And I feel good about myself as a Christian. Like we did something, right? We gave a food box during Christmas, or we did something else. Those are all good things. But the call is not to go and have like a savior complex where I'm going to do things for people. The call is to be in communion with each other around the same table, to be in each other's homes, to go to the places of suffering. And many of you mentioned this, right, in your posts. And that is hard. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have broken people in my home, whether it's homeless or other elements of brokenness, right? This is my personal space. My church, right? You can come pick something up and go, but to become part of us, it's very difficult to figure out how to do that, right? And I don't think it's all about disgust and contamination logic. I think that's just one piece of it, right? But that piece, I think, is significant. I think so much of the Old Testament law is about contamination logic, about cleanliness, uncleanliness, and that sin leaves a stain and a residue that can pass from person to person. We misapply the contamination of like, if I eat unclean food, I'll get sick. That's true, right? That's a biological truth. So it's good that we avoid unclean food. But humans now apply that logic to people, and so it's hard for us to care about people that are sinful. Many of you mentioned connections to height, like the fart spray study. You become more judgmental morally if you're around negative smells. And so I think when we're around the homeless, when the hygiene is a problem, we tend to be more judgmental, like, well, what did they do to become homeless, right? We become a little bit judgy. Maybe they deserve it. Maybe they're addicts. Maybe they're dangerous. We become suspicious. Our elephants become suspicious, even if our heart wants to have compassion, listen to their story, and fold them in. There's a part of us that makes it hard to do that, because those intuitions of disgust makes us more judgmental. Many of you mentioned Haidt's moral foundation of sanctity, right? Disgust and dirt and that feeling where you crinkle your nose, what's being triggered in part is your sanctity foundation. We want to be clean and pure, and we don't like when things mess with that, right? Many of us have that perspective of our church. This is a place to be revered and respected. So the homeless might contaminate the sacred space. Or if I think about my home, sleeping in my sheets, ooh, I don't want to do that, right? Like I've got to keep that clean, that's sacred. So these become barriers. In the end, though, I think what's happening a lot in my elephant, my heart, and in lots of Christians, I think it's probably true, feelings of disgust and fear of contamination and sinfulness in others, it makes me feel like they're the outgroup. So when I say the homeless, it's like it's them and it's us. How do we, good, clean, upstanding, love them, the other, the outgroup? But psychologically, we know once you label a group the outgroup, we're more judgmental on the outgroup, we're less compassionate on the outgroup, we're less likely to read best motives in the outgroup, we are suspicious. So we're a little bit standoffish, even if we don't want to be. And we've got to break down some of these barriers so that they become we, become us. If we can get over the in-group, out-group problems, I think we can provide Christian love and Christian hospitality in more radical ways. We do this with all kinds of sins, right? We don't react the same to every sin. We know that like sexual sins in the church get more attention, seem a bigger deal, more controversial. And I think part of it is we have a higher emotional response, an elephant response to sexual sins. We have more disgust about some sexual sins, at least, where it triggers like, oh, why would you do that, right? Or how could you do that? Those feelings say, well, that's sinful, that's foreign to me, that's outside, that's out-group. And now I'm worried, like, if we have invited those people into our community, what happened? Would it rub off on our children? Would it rub off in our communities? How would that work? And so the love and hospitality we want to show, maybe even we should show, it's hard. There are real psychological barriers. But I think sometimes it's disgust leading to in-group, out-group. Think about like when my children smell bad or they're dirty or whatever. I'm like, dude, your feet smell. Go take a shower. But I don't have the same feeling I would if it was a stranger who had the hygiene of my children, right? Or sometimes the smell of my children. My children are my in-group, almost like an extension of my body. So I'm gracious when they trigger my disgust elephant, right? Where I'm like, come on, man, you smell gross, or don't fart at the table, or whatever, like gross. But I would not have the same grace. I would not have the same humor. It would not be the same if it was someone I didn't know. Someone that was perceived as an out-group, right? That contagion that I'm leery of does not seem to happen so much when it's my own children, or my wife, or myself. So the more we can have the out-group become part of our in-group, the they becoming we, I think the more we can overcome some of these barriers. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll continue to see you guys online.